Wellness Show, Episode 80.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. This is Tyson Bannigan with The Wellness Show, and we're excited today to carry on the conversation with Laurie. Laurie is an animal communicator, written many books on the subject, and today we're talking about listening in a new way. So Laurie, tell us a bit about who you are and how you came to this particular topic. Why is this a passion for you?
Sure. Many people know me as Dr. Laurie Moore with animiracles.com. That's ANImiracles.com. I have a doctorate in expressive psychology, which means drama and art and movement and writing and the psychology of expression. And I've worked with people for many years, and I found throughout the years that if I listened to people through the universal heart within my own soul, that I received a much broader picture of who they are, what life is about, than if I just listened to the intellectual maps propagated by humanity at this time. And as I went deeper and deeper into that, my resonance with animals, which is always very, very strong, and my communication with animals, which was always very prevalent, took on a deeper capacity, thus changing my view of the world. I have great respect for animals. Animals have changed my worldview and my sensitivity to the many layers of energies that construct what a human is.
Wow, that's amazing. So how did you learn how to listen with your heart?
I was born that way. I actually believe I come from two ancestral lines where people are telepathic by heart, but because there's so much logic also in those lines, I don't think in the generations in which I've been alive, anyone else was focusing so much. I bet if I knew people way back in the ancestral line, this must have been happening. But I had to, because of my contracts when I incarnated, I had to listen to the angels and the animals because that's what I came to do. I came to make bridges between people and other realms.
Well, you're an interesting balance. I mean, somebody who's fey or gifted, with the ability to communicate with other dimensions, fairies, animals, angels, and all the rest of that, usually doesn't end up taking a Ph.D. So here you are, you're bridging two worlds, both the academic and the intuitive. So how that happened in your life?
Well, I had to do that because I'm very logical and I respect a balance between logic and intuition. I'm not interested in philosophies that don't look into science, and I'm not interested in sciences that don't look into the subjectivity of everything. I grew up on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. My dad worked for President Kennedy. Everyone was very logical. People used their mind fast. There wasn't a lot of BS. And something was missing, and then I went to the other coast. I went back to the coast I was born on. I only lived there for a year when I was a baby, but when I was 20, I went back. And there, my intuitive, creative, telepathic self was very, very embraced. But I sometimes had frustration with lack of logic in certain communities. And so I simply followed what seems to me to be what life is. It's a combination of these two worlds.
Well, that's beautifully stated. So really, you're coming from a whole brain perspective in both a marriage between the male and the female, or the intellect and reason. And so you have a message that you really want to deliver on behalf of not only the animal kingdom, but other kingdoms as well. It seems to me that's, if I'm understanding correctly, that's really part of your mission of why you showed up here. So why do you feel that it's such a pressing time to have this message come out? I know you're I could just feel the eagerness in you. So tell us about
Yes. Well, when I look at the political debates, because last night was the second presidential debate, I could laugh because they're extremely comical, or I could cry because they're tragic. Half the time I'm sitting there bewildered thinking, did I really hear that? So we have like a nursery school, junior high school, goes back and forth squabbling match. And I'm not hearing a lot about the issues. And I'm asking what has led us to this. So when I hear people enraged, I understand, and I take a different viewpoint, that being enraged at the mirror of everything we don't want to look at in ourselves, standing up in front of us, is not a fruitful activity. So given our society in this country in which I live, in which I was born, the United States, has created this kind of a conversation about our politics, indicates to me that we're not doing deep enough work on transforming who we are as individuals, thus as a group. We're projecting horrible things out. We're suppressing them inside, and then they're showing up like a big clown act in front of us. And so we can just get mad and more distracted, or we can say, hey, what's going on here? How do we need to listen more deeply to our hearts? How do we need to have compassion for what we've created? How do we need to be more meticulously attentive to the shadow sides within each of our molecules and upgrade? And that's really the opportunity when there's a Kali Yuga or there's a really hard time on the planet. The opportunity is to upgrade into deeper and deeper light, which takes deeper and deeper honesty about what's not light, for it to energetically transform. And I think that's the opportunity of the time. And I think if we start listening to how the animals interact with life, we will find our way back to a universal heart, a compassion, a recognition of soul purposes out of this silly, funny, odd, scary, tragic creation we're creating.
So how do we do that? How do we discover the universal compassion that the animals are trying to communicate with us? Help us to understand that. I mean, it's so easy to get caught into the buffoonery that's going on the political stage. But as you said, it's truly a reflection of the deeper part of ourselves collectively that needs to come through now and be birthed and dealt with on the planet, or we're going to bear the consequences of it. So in one way, we're really fortunate in that America, for whatever reasons, that this is where it's coming to the foreground. It's no longer behind the curtain. It's like the wizard has stepped out from behind the curtain and is now full front in front of the whole nation, acting out the very fears, doubts, shames, guilts, and all the unresolved issues that we have. And the animals have a different take on all this. So what is that different take on all this?
The animals, in my experience, having spoken to hundreds and hundreds of animals in personal dialogue, and when I say personal dialogue, it is not the type of intellectual conversation where the mind takes over that runs academia or runs the human race's current dialogues. It's a deep heart listening. Each animal is very aware of themselves as a soul with an aim, a purpose, an aim. And the only way to hear the animals is through the heart. And it's not the emotional, reactive DNA heart. It's the universal heart that is in a state of unconditional love and compassion. It's free, it's grace, it's inherent. It does not make the human perfect. It makes the human more attentive to where we're not love. So it's like operating from the soul and then calling the body and the brain back to that, which is very humbling because the body and the brain want to do all kinds of adolescent things.
So you're saying that the body and the brain are really the juveniles in the scenario, and it's the soul that really has the gift and the wisdom from multi-incarnations or multi-experiences. And then when we still ourselves enough, when, certainly in our culture, that's something that's not so easy for lots of us to do, then this higher part of ourself can speak through. And when we listen to it, it is humbling because we realize that we've been naive. Am I getting this right?
Yes, because we realize that no matter how many wonderful spiritual states we've been in, and of course some people claim they're in these constant spiritual states. Well, yes, we are in constant spiritual states. The deeper we go, it becomes a deeper resonance, calmness, but the mind will always look for a trick. The mind, the more evolved the human is, the more subtle the tricks. Because the mind is programmed towards power. The mind is programmed towards identity, duality. And that's not wrong or bad, but the artistic opportunity of incarnating as a human is to find out, how do we evolve? We don't know the answers. Turning to some ideal dogma from what, someone who had peak experiences and became a teacher and everyone followed, it's not gonna do it. It's not gonna do it at all. That just creates societies of more blindness and people not doing their work and people being distracted, and the teacher said this and the teacher said that and the dogma said this. It's not gonna create a humanity that's responsible. And there's no map. We're lost in space right now. So the opportunity is to start listening the way the animals do, from the soul, from the universal heart, and find out step by step, how do we cooperate? How do we work together on a planet where we have zillions of different viewpoints? How do we love one another? On the presidential debate, I was quite impressed when the last question asked, and I really thank the two hosts, was what can you appreciate about the other opponent? And all of a sudden, everything changed. Like people were asked to rise to their highest. Instead of having an adolescent squabble, people were appreciating each other, and that brought out something so good in the hearts of humanity. So see, we're all responsible in the moment to call ourselves back to gratitude, to love, the way the animals do every moment. And the animals are my role models for that.
Wow, that's powerful. So I know one of my teachers, or one of the people that had a great influence on me, was Krishnamurti, who said, truth is a pathless land. Really what he meant by that is there is no guru, and I'm certainly not going to be your guru, was his attitude with his students. And when they asked him a question, he really directed the question back to them and asked them, well, what do you think about that? So his was a technique of inquiry. But he also was one of the most demanding speakers I've ever met, whereas that he would be quiet until the whole audience he talked to raised their heart level to match his. He just would be quiet. He wouldn't say a word. So this is something that we're learning. I mean, unfortunately, we don't hear the animals unless we match their energy either. So how do we learn from animals when, for most people, that energy is not a match, so they can't hear what the animals are saying?
When people come to me and ask to learn to talk to the animals, I ask them to go back to gratitude, because when you're in gratitude, you drop into your heart. And when you drop into your heart, you're in a different trance or meditation than when you're just going with the mind's map. When you drop into your heart, the mind becomes a servant of the heart instead of vice versa. And the perspective of the unconditional love can begin to operate through you. That doesn't mean we're perfect. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to find me or anyone else who's going to be the perfect unconditional love. No one like that exists. We're human. It means we call ourselves back over and over and over. The animals do it easily. They don't have to call themselves back. They are there. We have to call ourselves back diligently every moment.
So the animals are dwelling in this reality all the time. Some people would say, well, but they don't have self-awareness. What would your answer be to that?
Well, people were very prejudiced against women and Jews, and I'll say that because I'm female and I have Jewish ancestry on one line, so that would make me Jew, and other all kinds of cultures.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, but in the end, it turned out, oh my God, we thought they were different, and to me, it's the same with animals. Yeah, their anthropology skills are so far advanced at us that they can become domestic, live with us, deal with all our blindness. But how many people can do what, oh, my mind's going blank today, what Jane, what was her name? What is her name? Sorry, Jane
Jane Goodall.
I'm talking about. Yes, yes, and others went and actually sat with and lived with them in the, oh, this is a culture. We missed 500 different words and body languages and the telepathy. Just like in my country, we're not really taught really well to go into other cultures and be quiet and say, oh, what's going on here? Let me learn. Because we think we know and we don't. And so if we could have the humility to just be a little more quiet and assume that the animals' languages of body and mind and telepathy are so intricate and advanced, and sound, we would start finding out. And people are. You're seeing more and more movies about crows and about elephants and different species and the dolphins and the whales, that we're not more advanced. We're less capable of unconditional states of consciousness, although we love to talk about them. I mean, I'm just very immersed in so many spiritual communities, and we love to talk about how advanced we are, but like, go sit with a cat, and then you'll be quiet.
Right.
And I say to myself, I'm talking to myself.
Well, you know, the other thing, and, you know, being a bit of a devil's advocate, because I can't help but hear the echoes of, you know, societal background is, you know, but, you know, Laurie, aren't you just being anthropogenic? Aren't you just projecting all those human emotions on those animals? I mean, I know your answers to answer to that, and I don't agree.
I love this question. Yeah, Rick Archer, a friend of mine, who I really respect and appreciate. We bantered a lot about these same issues on Buddha at the gas pump interview, and absolutely, I understand this viewpoint. But let me speak for the dolphins for a moment, who I spent time swimming with. And let me clarify, no, I didn't go, people thought I went swimming with dolphins in cages and parks. No, I'm talking about in the ocean where the dolphins choose to come to us. We can't choose to go to the dolphins. They can swim a million times faster than us, nor would we want to, but they choose to swim with us. They experience every emotion, but they experience it in unconditional bliss. So they don't bypass sorrow, jealousy, anger, all the non-preferred emotions among the human race. And that's a topic in itself, because emotion, we don't even understand yet. We have very funny ideas about what emotion is, but they experience all that, but it's in the unconditional bliss. Many, many felines experience all of the emotions we experience, but it's in the unconditional peace. And I have lots and lots of experience of all that within the unconditional love and peace when I let myself, as I aim to spend my time on earth doing, drop in. So I understand humans' fear about projecting emotions onto animals, but when you are in communication with animals and you ask to find out, am I making this up? Am I experiencing it? The animals find many, many ways to validate. And I have probably hundreds of interviews where I've spoken about this, so I don't want to go into it again, but I do want to say, listen to all my interviews, and I talk about the many ways animals will validate that you are listening to them or you're not. The bottom line is, when you're communicating with an animal, it's not an emotional projection. You have to go into an awakened state. You have to go into a oneness awareness. You have to drop into your heart, or they won't talk to you. It's not an emotional based realm. Emotions are moving in and out like the weather in an awakened state. And my conversations with animals, many, many animals have this awareness.
Well, you've really tweaked my personality and my curiosity by saying that the animals don't experience emotion like we did. And then you went on to say, you know, in actual fact, you didn't say it this way, but I'll put words into your mouth, that we have really a limited concept of what emotions are all about. That is really exciting to me, because what you're saying is, well, we would see them as maybe notes on a piano, some dark, some light, and we might put judgment on
Yes.
in the dark.
Yes.
You're saying no,
Yes.
the animals aren't focusing on the notes, they're focusing on the piano or the symphony or the whole. Not that they don't understand the individual notes, but it's the harmonious qualities that they're dwelling with. It's not that they don't feel sorrow or pain or and in many ways they're there for humans to help them get past that so they can get back in their joy. So, in our limited capacity to understand emotions, then what's the message from the animals to become more holistically understanding of our emotions and the role that they play in our own understanding and learning?
Well, you made a great point, actually, when you referred to the analogy of emotions to notes and lights, even though you were making a different point than this. But what you brought to my attention is that the animals don't say C sharp is bad, D's good, E's okay, F got an F. They don't do that. They do recognize the music. Everything's made out of sound and everything's made out of light. And so the animals have brought this to my attention quite a lot, because they're not saying, oh my God, that emotion's bad and you need therapy and get some drugs. Like, who would think that? The humans!
Right.
So what if you just sat in the emotional state as you would sit in a musical piece? You would find, if you go deeper into your heart, that it is, like you were saying, it's a harmony or a disharmony passing through. This is not necessarily bad or good. We give it a lot of extra meaning, and it's really just part of the picture. I grew up with strong emotions, and as I dissipated more and more into my universal heart state, I experienced emotions more and more like weather, like music. And animals have helped me very much to do this, because they're not, it's not like an animal's like, oh, I'm sad, I like being sad, or I want to stay sad, or I don't mean to suggest that. I mean to suggest that as we go deeper into a universal heart space, everything that's happening takes on a different quality. I'm not poo-pooing counseling, I'm a therapist, okay? So, but I kind of do it in a different way than is so common. Yeah, we want to organize and pay attention and shift and change the music, the light, within the emotions, the physicality, if it's off, if it's out of harmony, if illness comes. But there's a way to experience that in a peace, in a love, that's not contingent on that. It's almost like reversing what's primary and what's secondary.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Going back to Krishnamurti, I don't know why Krishnamurti is showing up in this interview, but obviously he is. And he says, praise or blame. Take what you can and learn and leave the rest. So that's another way of saying the same thing. Don't get attached with the notes, whether they're positive, negative, or whether you want to make a value judgment on them. I mean, what is the learning in that you can gain for your own edification? Let the rest go. It's neither here nor there. Like you said, it's like weather. So maybe that also helps us get closer by not being attached to the individual notes. There are just notes, right? But humans want to put a value judgment on them.
And medications and everything. And, medications are fine. But, life is really awesome when you feel it. And there's also a misunderstanding that comes with that, because in the non-duality places, there's kind of an over-attachment amongst some to nothing has any meaning and everything's oneness. And we can't take all ethics and morality out of the paradigms of community and society. That's not going to work either. So what I say about that is, if we are aware of our soul purpose, our basic intention, and everyone has one, it might be peace, it might be love, it might be generosity, but if we're operating from that basic intention, you can't create that, you're born with it. And if you're not fighting it and distracting from it and medicating it and running away from it and fighting it, and you're just sinking into it, then that intention will flavor and color these experiences that you claim you're having. You think they're coming to you when in fact you're generating something, and then it's kind of being seen all around you and attracting to you.
Well, that again is another powerful statement, because if I understand what you're saying, then that we're creating our own world, but our natural state of being is like animals. It's a holistic connection to everything that is. It's not something that we're striving to become one with. We are. And that child has innocence and that connection when they're born. So it's not as though it's not like not that we even have to learn anything. We have to let go of the conditioning and all the belief system that we got in the way of the natural state of who we are, which is connected to all of life, which includes the animals. So it's almost like it's almost like, I guess when I want to think about the presidential debate, everything that was important that should have been discussed about how to be human and be connected to the whole never was on the agenda. So the whole relevance of us as humans and why we need to get along and make this a better planet to live on was never discussed. Am I getting it?
I'm very grateful to the people who are running for president for putting themselves out in such a big way that it's forcing me to look at everything in myself that is not congruent with my soul intention, and give permission for it to be extracted from my body and brain, and give permission for my body and brain to dissipate back into my soul.
Yeah, and that's the same for all of us. And, it's the same not only for America, because, everybody in the world is watching this as well. So, we have an opportunity on the world stage, not just on the American presidential stage, to take this inside of ourselves as, why am I reacting? Why am I having such a strong aversion to what is being presented? What is this triggering inside of me? But more importantly, like you're saying, is, this is going to vastly affect the populations of plants and animals and all the rest of the kingdoms. So when we turn to them and ask them, then we're back to this with the communication they have with us, and that is, if I'm understanding you correctly, get out of your head, get back in your body, remember who you are, remember that you're connected to Source. This is not the oneness of La La Land. This is the oneness of being part of the fabric of the wholeness of which you have always been part, never could be separated except through illusion. Am I starting to understand?
Yes, absolutely. And Mary Magdalene, not who has been said to be a prostitute, but as so much more information has come out. And personally, I have a very deep connection with Mary Magdalene, just as much as with Christ and Buddha and Yogananda and Babaji and many others. The real Mary Magdalene, the transformative light, I'm quoting her, she's not telepathically, but from one of the Gospels. She was talking about seeking the light in yourself and shifting everything in yourself back to light instead of being concerned with changing the world. And I come from pretty strong passion for changing the world as in many years of my life. But in these hard times where I see such bizarreness happening on the globe, it has forced me to become intricately, meticulously involved in the cells and molecules of my own body and mind, and everything there, as I said, that's incongruent with my soul intention, and constantly giving, pretty much training my mind so it's either in gratitude, intention, or prayer as much as possible. Sometimes it's in constructive work, and sometimes it's just, in some BS, but but to really be so honest with myself about everything personal and planetary in my consciousness that really isn't love, and as the animals do, to go back to the self in that way, to that shifting as a means of how we change our planet. So when we see in the spotlight something that is so off track from that, reminding ourselves, what is this, like you were saying, stimulating, triggering in me, that can be released, brought back, transformed simply by being aware of it and the heart giving permission for that dissolving or extraction to occur.
Well, we're nearly at the end of the show yet again. I don't know where the half hour went. And I know you want to offer this opportunity for people to be able to work with you. So could you talk about that in the last 30 seconds of the show?
Yes, I am offering, which I haven't offered for a while, my gift 10-minute readings, which would ordinarily cost $65. And you can have one for a person or an animal if you contact me within 3 days of the airing of this show. So that would be by October 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we'll say, okay? October 20th, 5 p.m. Pacific time, and I can only take the first 40 people. So bear in mind, if you email me at Laurie, Laurie, at drlauriemore, that's MOORE.com, that's Laurie, at drlauriemore.com, and you are one of those first 40 people, you will be able to sign up for that reading. I am booked out, so it might be many months before you have it, but you will receive information back on how to schedule yourself from my office.
Laurie, thank you ever so much for being on the show again. Of course, we'll have you back. I know we have messages from the insects that we want to talk about sometime. So we have more to talk about. So stay tuned and look for the next Laurie show. All right. That's bye for now.
Bye.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.